Silver just exploded 6% in a single day. Not slowly, not grinding, exploded. In hours. And I need to show you why. Because the reason silver moved 6% yesterday is not a chart pattern. It is not a technical breakout. It is not retail buyers chasing momentum. It is something that has been building for 9 days, and yesterday it finally broke through the surface. 9 days ago, Donald Trump gave Iran a deadline. Make a nuclear deal within 10 to 15 days. Or face what he called really bad things, his exact words, publicly, on the record. Yesterday was day 9. There's no deal. And here is what happened on the same day the deadline passed its halfway point with no resolution. The United States ambassador to Israel sent an email to every member of his embassy staff. Not a press release, not a government advisory on a website, a personal email from the ambassador to his people. The email said 5 words that I want you to read carefully. Do so today. Leave Israel now. And then Ambassador Huckabee added one more sentence. He wrote, while there may be outbound flights over the coming days, there may not be. Read that again. The sitting United States ambassador to Israel just told his own staff that flights out of Tel Aviv may not exist in the coming days. Not that they might be delayed, not that they might be expensive, that they may not exist. When does airspace shut down over a country? When bombs are falling. On that same morning, the January producer price index landed from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Core inflation running at 3.6% annualized, almost double the Federal Reserve's 2% target. The highest monthly reading since July 2025. The Dow fell 728 points. Every major stock index sold off, and silver hit $94. Gold crossed $5,246. I'm going to show you why all 3 of those things, the failed nuclear deadline, the embassy evacuation, and the inflation shock, are not 3 separate stories. They are one story. The market figured that out yesterday. And after this video, you will understand exactly what the market is pricing right now. Because here is the number the market is actually calculating, not the price of silver, the probability that the Strait of Hormuz closes before Trump's deadline expires around March 6th. That is the real number. And yesterday, every piece of news moved it higher. Let me show you what has been building for 9 days, because context makes everything that happened yesterday 10 times more significant. On February 19th, Trump posted a public deadline, 10 to 15 days, make a deal, or face consequences he refused to name. His aides told reporters he had already received briefings on military options. Not planning sessions. Briefings on specific strikes. The Wall Street Journal reported the U.S. demands directly permanent destruction of the nuclear sites at Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. Iran's entire enriched uranium stockpile physically delivered to the United States. No sunset clauses. Not a 10-year deal, not a 15-year deal. Forever. Iran's answer was equally clear. Enrichment continues. The stockpile stays in Iran. The nuclear program is peaceful. Missiles are not on the table. The 2 sides have never been in the same room. They communicate through Oman's foreign minister shuttling between delegations. In Geneva, in a diplomatic format designed for patience, Trump gave them 10 to 15 days. Day 9 is today. Still no deal. Now here is what most people are missing when they look at this situation. The military did not wait for the diplomatic clock to run out before it started moving. While diplomats were talking in Switzerland, 2 United States Navy carrier strike groups were repositioning in the Middle East. The USS Abraham Lincoln has been in the Arabian Sea since late January. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the largest aircraft carrier in the United States Navy, departed Crete 2 days ago and is now positioned off the coast of Israel. That is 2 carrier strike groups, 13 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers carrying dozens of Tomahawk cruise missiles each, more than 100 fighter jets. The United States has not assembled that kind of force in the Middle East since the week before the 2003 invasion of Iraq. But here is the single detail that tells you this is not a negotiating gesture. On February 24th, 11 F-22 Raptor stealth fighters were deployed to Ovda Airbase in southern Israel. Satellite imagery confirmed the aircraft on taxiways. The F-22 is the most advanced air superiority fighter on Earth. And it is the exact aircraft that was used in Operation Midnight Hammer last June when the United States struck Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan directly. The same planes, the same mission profile, now parked inside Israeli borders. This is the first time in history the United States has deployed offensive weapons inside Israel in anticipation of real-world combat operations. But there is one more detail that makes the deployment real rather than symbolic. KC-46 and KC-135 aerial refueling tankers are at Ben-Gurion Airport right now. Here is why that matters. Without refueling tankers, F-22s cannot reach Iranian nuclear sites from Israel and return. The tankers make the mission possible. They are there. That means the capability to strike is not theoretical. It is physically assembled. Right now, today. And the rest of the world is reading it the same way. KLM suspended all flights to Tel Aviv yesterday. The Lufthansa Group warned of disruptions through March 15th. Australia directed the departure of all dependents of its officials in Israel. China is urging its nationals in Iran to leave immediately. India has advised citizens to avoid travel to the region. Airlines do not make those decisions based on political theater. They make them based on actuarial calculations, insurance premiums, liability exposure, the probability that a jet does not land safely. KLM looked at what was assembled in the Middle East and decided the probability of hostilities was too high to absorb. They priced it with a cancellation. The silver market priced the same calculation at 6% higher. Now let me connect this directly to silver, because this is the part no one else is explaining properly. The Strait of Hormuz is a waterway between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula that is 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. Every single day, 20% of the world's oil supply moves through it, 17 million barrels, more than 18 fully loaded supertankers passing through a 21-mile gap every 24 hours. Iran has already conducted live-fire naval drills in the strait. On February 16th, the IRGC Navy announced a temporary closure of sections of the waterway during exercises. That has not happened since the 1980s. Iran's supreme leader has publicly stated that U.S. warships in the Gulf could be, in his words, sunk to the bottom of the sea. And here's the fact that should stop every person watching this cold. Iran's official military doctrine has formally shifted from defensive to offensive since last June's U.S. strike on its nuclear facilities. Read that again. Iran's military doctrine, officially, on record, shifted from defensive to offensive. That means Iran is no longer planning to absorb a strike and respond. It is planning to act first. If the Strait of Hormuz closes, even for 72 hours, oil prices do not tick higher. They spike violently. Every commodity that requires transportation reprices overnight. Supply chains freeze. And here's the part that connects directly to this morning's inflation data. The producer price index landed at 3.6% annualized on the core reading, almost double the Federal Reserve's target. Services inflation at its highest monthly reading since July 2025. The Dow fell 728 points. The 3.6% is the inflation baseline before any Hormuz disruption, before a single additional barrel of oil becomes unavailable, before a single supply chain reroutes around a closed choke point. If the strait closes on top of a 3.6% inflation baseline, the Federal Reserve is looking at an inflation problem it cannot fix with any tool it has. It cannot raise rates because the economy is already cracking. Housing is frozen. Consumer debt at all-time records. Raise rates and you break the economy. But it cannot cut rates because inflation is already running at 3.6% before an oil shock. Cut rates and inflation goes to 5, 6, 7%. The word for that trap is stagflation. An economy where inflation is running hot and growth is slowing, and the central bank has no good option. Let me tell you what stagflation does to silver, because there is historical record here, and it is not subtle. In the stagflation of the 1970s, silver went from $1.50 to $49.45. That is a 3,200% gain, not because speculators piled in, because every dollar held in a savings account was losing purchasing power every single month, and people needed something the government could not print. Silver and gold were the exit from the trap. The conditions being assembled right now are not a slow-moving 1970s repeat. They are a compressed and accelerated version arriving in a single week. Hot inflation data confirmed this morning. Failed nuclear diplomacy confirmed yesterday. Embassy evacuation happening right now. The largest U.S. military buildup in the Middle East since 2003. Live-fire IRGC drills in the Strait. And silver at $94. This is what it looks like in real time when the market starts pricing the probability that the Hormuz choke point is no longer theoretical. Now let me show you the physical market underneath all of this, because even without the war, even without the inflation shock, even without the embassy evacuation, silver was already building towards something structural that has no historical parallel. COMEX registered silver, the only metal that can legally be delivered against a futures contract, stands at 86 million ounces. In October 2025, it was 167.7 million. In 2020, it was 346 million ounces. That is a 75% collapse in 5 years. And it is not slowing down. It is draining at 785,000 ounces every single trading day. Now here's the delivery data that tells you why that drain is not stopping. Full year 2024, COMEX silver deliveries totaled 203 million ounces. Full year 2025, that number became 474 million. A doubling in a single year. December 2025 alone delivered 46.6 million ounces. That is 54% of the entire current registered inventory in a single month. January 2026 delivered 49.4 million ounces. January is supposed to be quiet. Historical January deliveries run 6 to 7 million ounces. January 2026 delivered 7 times that. And February's delivery rate came in at 98% of standing contracts. Read that again, 98%. In a normal futures market, delivery rates run 2 to 5%. 10% is elevated, 20% is alarming. 30% has never happened in modern comics history. February 2026 hit 98%. That means nearly every single institution that held a February silver futures contract decided they wanted the physical bars. Not cash settlement, not a paper promise, the actual bars. When buyers stop trusting paper promises and start demanding the metal itself, you are not watching a futures market anymore. You are watching a run on the bank. And yesterday was first notice day for March. The deadline when every March contract holder can formally declare, I want the metal. The vault holds 86 million ounces. March delivery has just begun, and 785,000 ounces drain out every single day before a single March delivery notice is added to the pile. Now, let me give you something that almost nobody is connecting to the war story, because it is the link that makes everything in this video come together into a single picture. Silver is in every missile guidance system, every military satellite, every aircraft carrier's electronic warfare suite, every F-22 Raptor's avionics package, every communication system on every destroyer that just positioned itself in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Arabian Sea. The United States military runs on silver. It is not a commodity input. It is an irreplaceable strategic material in every weapon system that is currently deployed within striking range of Iran, and the United States added silver to the critical minerals list specifically because of this. Not because silver was scarce, because silver was irreplaceable and the supply was becoming uncertain. China understood this before the United States did. China classified silver as a strategic material in January 2026, same category as rare earth elements. It cut export licenses down to 44 approved companies. The second largest silver producing country on earth is telling its refiners that this metal stays inside China. That is not a market decision. That is a war preparation posture. Mexico, the world's largest silver producing nation, is in the middle of a cartel war that has disrupted refined silver transportation since El Mencho was killed days ago. Retaliatory violence has spread across 20 states. Transportation insurance for silver bars moving through the primary producing regions is currently unobtainable. The inventory restoration that would normally follow a delivery surge is not happening. The vault drain has no visible source of replenishment. 3 supply disruptions simultaneously. China restricting exports. Mexico disrupting transportation. And now a military confrontation assembling around the Strait of Hormuz that would close the shipping lanes through which any emergency supply replacement would have to move. The physical market for the metal that powers the weapons being assembled right now is more constrained than at any point in recorded comics history. And a war involving the military assets that require that metal most urgently is 9 days into a 10 to 15 day countdown. The gold-silver ratio today sits at 57. That means it takes 57 ounces of silver to buy 1 ounce of gold. Historically, when this ratio has been above 80 and then compressed, silver has rallied 40, 300, even 400% in the cycles that followed. The ratio has already fallen from above 100 in early 2024 to 57 today. JP Morgan has set its year-end 2026 gold target at $6,300. At a gold-silver ratio of 40, which is where the ratio is historically settled in mature precious metals bull markets, silver is at $157. At a ratio of 35, silver is above $180. That math does not require a war. It does not require a Hormuz closure. It only requires the physical delivery demand that is already happening at 98% rates to continue for a few more months while the vault drains and the supply chain stays disrupted. The war accelerates the math. It does not create it. Now I want to give you the honest counter-argument, because this channel exists to give you the full picture, not just the bull case. The Iran talks did not collapse. They recessed for technical work. The Omani mediator described the third round as producing significant progress. Araghchi himself said there was good progress on the nuclear framework. A recessed negotiation is not a failed one. Trump has publicly missed deadlines before, with North Korea, with China on trade, with Europe on tariffs. The 10 to 15-day window has more elasticity in practice than in public rhetoric. If signals from Oman suggest progress, the window extends. 2 carrier groups is enormous leverage. But leverage is designed to be visible precisely because the goal is to avoid using it. The largest military assemblies in U.S. history have repeatedly produced diplomatic resolutions rather than conflict. The force being positioned may be the reason a deal happens, not the reason a war starts. And silver moving 6% in a session has happened before in this cycle. The January run from $71 to $121 was followed by a crash to $63. Volatility this sharp always cuts both directions. I am not dismissing any of that. Those are real points. But here is what the counter-argument cannot explain. Governments communicate in layers. Level 1 is a travel advisory on a website. Level 2 is authorized departure, meaning you can leave if you choose. What happened yesterday went beyond both. The United States ambassador personally emailed every member of his staff and told them to leave today. That is not a public statement. That is a private internal message to his own people about what he believes is coming. Ambassadors do not send that email unless they believe they need to send it. KLM does not cancel flights because of diplomatic posturing. Airlines price risk with actuarial precision. They canceled Tel Aviv service because the probability of hostilities was too high for their insurers to absorb. That is a pricing decision made by people whose entire job is to calculate real probability, not political narrative. When the ambassador and the airline are making the same calculation, you pay attention. And here is the final thing that the counter-argument cannot explain away. The refueling tankers are at Ben-Gurion Airport. That is not a deterrence asset. Tankers do not deter, they enable. F-22s need tankers to reach Iran and return. The tankers being positioned inside Israel means the operational capability to strike has been physically assembled. You do not position tankers inside an ally's airbase for negotiations. You position them for a mission. Here is what you watch from this point forward. Because this is not resolved. It is accelerating. The single most important signal in the world right now is the Strait of Hormuz. Not the talks, not Trump's tweets, not the COMEX Vault report, the Strait. If Iranian naval activity escalates beyond the February 16th live fire exercises, if any incident occurs involving U.S. or allied shipping in the choke point, if any formal restriction on Hormuz traffic is announced, oil reprices, inflation reprices, and silver reprices simultaneously and violently. Everything else in this video is context. The Strait is the trigger. Watch Trump's public statements through March 6th. He made a public commitment on February 19th in front of the entire world. Every statement before March 6th either extends the window or confirms the ultimatum. There is no third option. How he manages the approach of his own deadline tells you more than any market data. Watch the COMEX Vault report every evening at 6 p.m. Eastern. The physical foundation under yesterday's price move is not just the Iran story. It is 86 million registered ounces draining at 785,000 ounces per day, while March delivery demand is just beginning. The vault drain does not pause because a geopolitical event is developing. It compounds with it. And watch the Fed. Core PPI at 3.6% has trapped the central bank between inflation it cannot control and an economy it cannot afford to break. Every rate decision from this point forward either pours fuel on inflation or cracks growth. Gold and silver perform in that trap, regardless of which direction the Fed moves. There is no policy path that is bearish for metals right now. Here is what I keep coming back to on February 28th, as I look at everything assembled in the last 9 days. Silver started 2026 at $68. It hit $121.79 on January 29th. It crashed to $63.90 in the margin-driven liquidation. It recovered through physical delivery demand at 98% rates, through a vault draining at 785,000 ounces a day, through China restricting exports and Mexico disrupting transportation. And yesterday, on the day the embassy said leave while flights still exist, on the day core inflation came in at almost double the Fed's target, on day 9 of a public nuclear ultimatum with 6 days left on the clock, silver hit 94. The metal that is in every missile guidance system deployed in the eastern Mediterranean right now, every F-22 avionics package sitting on a taxiway in southern Israel, every electronic warfare system on every destroyer positioned off the coast of Tel Aviv, every satellite providing targeting coordinates to assets that are assembled and ready, the metal that the United States declared irreplaceable in defense manufacturing, the metal that China classified as strategic and stopped exporting, the metal draining out of the world's primary delivery vault at 750,000 ounces every single trading day. That metal hit $94 yesterday, while the ambassador told his staff to get on planes before the flights disappear. Day 9, 6 days to the deadline. The market is not panicking, it is not speculating, it is calculating one number, the probability that the Strait of Hormuz closes before March 6th. Every piece of news from the last 9 days moved that probability higher. The price on your screen is the market's running tally of everything it knows and everything it fears. Silver at $94 is not a prediction. It is not a target. It is not hype. It is a vote. And the vote count has 6 days left to run. If you understood what I just showed you, you're already ahead of 99% of this market. But this is not a one-time event. This is unfolding day by day, number by number, signal by signal. And I track it in real time. So if you want to stay ahead of what's coming next, not after it happens, not when the headlines catch up, but while it's building, subscribe. Because the next move in this market won't come with a warning.